Welcome to the Intercut podcast, the weekly show going over the TV, movies, and entertainment that people can't cut away from. I am your host, Zachary Shevich, and joining me, he's the girl that threw the brick. It's Arturo Zurita.
I haven't caught the show you're referencing yet, but I'm excited to be here with you, Zach, with Fernando, I think. I have an actual gift to give over here. Something that Fernando may actually like. I had ordered a couple A24 stuff, and I was telling you at the beginning of the episodes that I wanted to add some stuff to pizzazz all the open spots that we have over here. And I had ordered those pins from A24, Toni Collette one. I don't know how much of it you guys can see over there. Fascinated by these pins. The most fascinating part is these are A24 stuff. The fact they were in stock, first and foremost, right, is the craziest bit. But the packaging for the first one, it came with these Lighthouse things, which is really great if you cared for the Lighthouse. But what I do care for is the Toni Collette pin, which is really dope. And then I don't know why they packaged the Midsommar one like this.
What the heck?
And like Harga actual stuff. Like literally, this is how it came packaged. It was just stuffed in an envelope. But I was able to get the Midsommar and
very cool.
Toni Collette.
Yeah, those
we got those right there to add to it. But
starting your collection of distressing A24 ladies.
Pretty much. But I'm excited to be here. And Fernando, I will send you.
A24's got that whole merch shop going.
Yeah. If they had everything in stock. Yeah.
That's another great point.
So there is that.
From producer/intern Fernando. Say what up, Fernando.
What's up, guys? Glad to be here. I wish I could have the luxury of buying such nice pins. How much were they? Like $30, Art?
The posters were free. They came for free.
Oh,
the pins were $15.
15? Yeah. They're like
it's not like the books that
decent,
they're selling.
But,
yeah.
But yeah.
It's if they're in stock that's what matters there. But
those things go like crazy.
Yeah, very limited quantity on a lot of those A24 things. That's how they get you. Well, in a little bit, we'll be talking about Apple TV Plus, HBO Max, and Watchmen. But first, we are brought to you by Mort & Co. Mort & Co. themed candles are the happiest scents on earth and available to you through their Etsy shop. Just search Mort & Co. on Etsy for a wide array of scented candles, a lot of which are based on your favorite Disney properties. Art's got one over there in Chicago. What's that smell like, Art?
This one's Big Thunder Cactus. It's based off of the mine train ride, the one that takes like 3 hours for you to be able. You know which one I'm talking about to get in there. It's like I'm there. No wait, no line. I'm inside the ride. It really does. This is Alina's favorite smelling one. But yeah, like Zach said, down below, we always have a link. They have a monthly candle that they do. Good friends of ours over there. Definitely go check them out. You can score some candles. And a lot of people, when we were talking about them earlier, they got a lot of stuff coming for the holidays. Yo, the Star Wars ones are killing it because there's a good side, dark side. Mm-hmm. All it creates is just an argument on which side smells better. Yeah. And then it just goes from there. But big shout out to them for sponsoring. And definitely click the link down below. They got a candle of the month as well. So.
Yeah, so make sure you hit up that candle and check out Mort & Co. candles. Hey, also make sure you're subscribed to the Intercut podcast. Enter either the video podcast on youtube.com/intercutpod or the audio podcast available on most podcatchers. Also follow Intercut on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you're good with. We're at Intercut Pod. That's at Intercut POD. That's short for podcast. All right, let's start the show the way we start it pretty much every week here with what we're watching. What you been watching, buddy?
Two little streaming things, and I think, well, you've caught both. Looking for Alaska.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, so I think it's worth noting that this is a book that I read when I was in high school, and I found very affecting. It's a book by John Green, who's also the author of The Fault in Our Stars, which obviously was a massively successful book and movie. And he's kind of got a particular style where he has these very eloquent teens who ruminate on existence and probably speak a little bit above their
reading level,
what should be their intellect level, vocabulary level. But you know, I think it's in a tradition that's similar to shows like Dawson's Creek or whatever, where it's like it's supposed to be what these teens are feeling if they could express the words this eloquently.
That's the best way to put it. I
definitely feel like it's kind of like you gotta buy into it or not, and sometimes it's harder to than others.
One of the ones you didn't mention was Paper Towns, another one that he
Paper
did,
Towns,
which just led me
okay.
to go. The moment this thing starts, the mom asked the boy, "Why are you going to this? How would you explain it? A high school, but it's a camp.
It seems like it's a summer camp, but it's
Yeah.
actually a boarding school.
School that's in a camp, and the kids get together and they're pretty much creating these sects so they don't snitch on each other, but they do start snitching on each other. Pretty much,
And being the worst thing in the world is being a rat.
yeah, like this is Departed or something. They really treat the show at a certain point. But the show starts and this kid, supposedly John Green went through a school like this. This is foreign to me completely. I don't know. These kids are able to do whatever they want.
Having read the book and seen the movie, seen the series, the Hulu series, we should mention. I do find that John Green's writing is something that works a lot better on the page when you can read the thoughts and you can spend time in the mind of the character. And that doesn't mean it's unable to be adapted into something good. But I think, weirdly, this might have been too faithful of an adaptation.
Is that what it is? Because I'm watching this stuff, and these kids are talking. What is it with him always taking a middle-class suburban boy, white male, who's always like, you know what? I'm obsessed with that person. Don't even know who I am, but I'm obsessed with that person. I'm going to find. That was Paper Towns. She's looking for Alaska before he even knows who Alaska is. And their interactions are the goofiest things. If I ever meet somebody and they go, okay, I'm bored. You have 10 seconds to entertain me, or you don't exist in my world. I'm walking out of that room. That's not how you meet other people. It's goofy at times, but there's points where they do. It's entertaining enough that I've caught it halfway through, and I do plan on finishing. Like you said, I do think it works probably better written than actually hearing these kids try to sound like the author who's writing these thoughts for them. But yeah, did you like it? What did you think of it? If you saw the entire thing,
I was ultimately disappointed, although I do think there
sign
are
of
things
encouragement.
that worked about the show.
Okay.
I liked the character Pudge. Sorry, not Pudge. Excuse me. The Colonel. I thought he was adapted well. I think the actor they chose to play him was well. And speaking of Pudge, Charlie Plummer is the main character in the show, and I thought he's pretty good too. So there's elements of the show that I liked, and I do think it's worth sticking with it past where you are because it takes an interesting turn. But I don't know. I was ultimately disappointed with it.
Right.
Comes from, I believe, Josh Schwartz is one of the co-creators of the show. He did the OC, so he's familiar with like teen stuff.
Makes sense. It reminded me a lot of The Society, which is also on Netflix, and it also stars the actress who plays Alaska. Like, she's in everything. I was just watching her in something else before this as well. I mean, good for her. She's getting work. Another one, Apple TV. So much stuff that came out on Apple TV. I don't know what you guys caught. Those of you guys watching, let us know what the best ones are. With C, there was the one with, what's her name from Haley Steinfeld. She's got her own series. Dickinson. But the one I caught was Morning Show. It's got 3 free episodes, or 2 of the episodes are free for you to watch if you have an iPhone or something that has Apple TV.
Are currently out.
Yeah, and then there's 3 episodes. I caught 2 of them. I know you caught one of them. Network. In the Me Too era.
Right. I think that's a really, really kind review, and I know you don't mean it that way.
Yeah, because it's not Network, but it is Me Too, I guess. We were talking earlier. There's a certain degree to it where it's practically like what happened after Matt Lauer's events happened, and how that
it is based on the book that
and they mentioned
chronicled some of that. I believe
they name drop a lot of Me Too cases, jizzing implants, all of that's out in the open. But there's a lot of it where it seems very fabricated. There's stuff that's supposed to be like viral moments that characters go through that is like, you see, that character does care about the news. I was like, really? Because that whole bit would never be on my Twitter feed as something that's trending. That feels like an Apple scripted show for Apple TV.
There's nothing worse than when a movie or TV show insists that something went viral. And it's just the complete antithesis to the things that go viral.
Now, you haven't seen the second episode, but in the second episode, they actually go at it, the 2 actresses, it being Jennifer Aniston, who's trying to maintain her spot as a news anchor after her co-anchor, played by Steve Carell, this man's dirty. That man is a dog. He has a bunch of allegations against him. He claims otherwise, but they now need to find a replacement. Which is also a very
interesting use of the often very likable Steve Carell to make him this figurehead of sexual misconduct.
Because for the first like 20-ish minutes, they keep it like, did he or did he not? The first introduction to him is, wow, no one's taking my call. She threw me under the bus. And then you hear his big speech and it's like, nah, homie, you sick. But yeah, I agree with you. It's an inversion of that. In the second episode, you actually get a scene between Reese Witherspoon and Aniston.
They do have one at the tail end of the first episode when they're talking on air.
Okay, then that's the bit I'm talking about. And I do like their chemistry together, but I couldn't help but thinking, Belle Powley and Gugu's character.
Yeah.
They should have been the main characters in this thing. Even who's the he's not an assistant, but the one who keeps walking around with Aniston. He's hilarious. I'm blanking on his name. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I'm not sure his name either, but yeah.
I'm blanking on it, but he from the League. He kills it. He's the best. He has a lot of the funniest scenes. So there's enough in there for me to like want to continue watching it. And I think they're doing it a week by week basis. The first 3, which I do like, they always say once you start a series, give it 3 episodes. You like it, maybe you don't. I finished the first 2. It's not great. It's not the best. You got Newsroom out there. You got the Movie Network. You got a lot of other things out there that you can watch when it comes to news related stuff. There was something you had mentioned earlier about the America line where it just didn't feel.
Right. Well, Newsroom
authentic.
is an interesting comparison for you to make because I think ultimately Newsroom suffered from some similar flaws as I'm seeing through the first episode of the morning show. Is there times where they take themselves a little bit too seriously, and there are times where they just get sanctimonious in a way that doesn't resonate. In the morning show, they do this thing like they talk about we do this for America, or I have to talk to America, inflating their value in a way that feels pretentious. Like you could say that line, but you have to do it a little more knowingly, I think, than the show does it.
Unless they do something later on where it's like they're all playing it for show. There is a line that said it's like, wow, that's very clean cut, almost like it was rehearsed. We'll see. But yeah, those are the 2 that I'm watching. What are you guys watching?
Fernando?
It was a really good week for me when it comes to things that we're watching. When you have like a good, like solid, like you watch like 3 movies back to back and you're like, okay, like this is why I like watching movies. I could talk about 2, but I mean the one I have to talk about is Parasite because
you finally caught up with it.
Oh yeah, you
and
congrats.
I saw your guys' Let Us Explain on it, which reaffirmed a lot of what I was feeling. I was like, okay, like this is great. And the more I keep thinking about it, I want to see it again like so badly. It's just like it's the best movie this year. It's definitely one of my favorite Bong movies, and
you've been on the binge.
Yeah, I've seen all of his movies, and it's
like
definitely.
Fernando recently published an article on the atzshow.com ranking all of his ranking all of the Bong Joon-ho films. So
nice little
head over
revisit.
there. We'll put that link in the description too.
Yeah, and right now I'm still tossing it up whether it's my number 1 or 2, right behind Memories, because I love Memories. But
that's fair.
Just the way that he like handles. And I'll say this without going into spoilers, because if you want spoilers, just go see the Let Us Explain that Martin's acted. But it's like 2 different tones, but they like work so well together, and just the way like the movie flows from the first half into the second half. Because for me, that second half is like perfect. It's like I really find the first half entertaining, but that second half is what like made it what it was for me. And when the twist happens, I was like, yo, what is going on right now?
It morphs from like this really enjoyable comedy into a pitch perfect thriller.
And he's a master. I'm so happy for him that he's getting like this exposure that so many people are going to see his movies, even though
that's what I love.
Even though right now it's like really limited, like New York and LA are like the big markets like selling out, but my theater was packed, and I'm hoping more people go see it. So definitely go see it if it's near you.
One question for you. So you heard the Let Us Explain.
Yeah.
Who you side with on the ending without any spoilers?
I find it optimistic.
Thank you.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you. Bro, Alina comes up to me the other day and goes, so I read an interview with Bong and you may be right. I go, of course I'm right. I'm not waiting for that one, honey. I'm waiting for you to know that it's also better than Portrait of a Lady, but you haven't seen Portrait of a Lady yet.
No.
That's going to be the interesting discussion.
Probably going to have to wait till December because that's when it gets released.
But Zach also had a similar week to you, as you mentioned your other 2, where he had at New York, where he went back to back to back.
Yeah.
But what were the other 2 that you had?
I saw Dolemite actually in theaters because it played at this. It's super enjoyable. I guess I'll talk about that later in the show. And then The Lighthouse, which I know
you liked. I'll send you one of these. I'll send them back with Fernando
All
for
right.
you. I'll send it back with Fernando for you.
With Fernando, that's me.
I set it up. Or sorry, with Andres. Watch, I set it on fire on accident.
I know Art didn't like it that much, but like the Lighthouse, I don't know, man. There was just something about the way it was filmed. I'm not
Very
crazy
well
about The Witch. Do you like The Witch a lot?
That's why Chase and I were very surprised with this movie.
Because I've seen The Witch. I saw it once, like last year, I think, and I was like, all right, this is good. Maybe I have to give it another watch, but the Lighthouse.
And I need to give Lighthouse another watch.
Yeah,
So.
I don't know. I mean, I definitely like feel you. Like I know you don't like that like weird like surrealist kind of thing with like Climax or Suspiria. It's very much in that playing field.
It worked. It's effective. I'll put that.
Yeah. But I mean, it has a crazy audience. Like I know Letterboxd does like these lists where it's like, oh, the best horror films, right? Or whatever.
Or most divisive.
Yeah.
Or...
And they literally just made a new one, and Lighthouse is already like in the top 10. Like people flood Letterboxd with like love for a movie.
Yeah.
So it has a really big audience, even though it's like pretty small.
It does.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
strong
they're
audience, I'll
definitely-
say that.
Passionate Lighthouse fans.
Yeah, and I just found it funny. Like after I tweeted my initial like reaction tweet, like 20 Robert Pattinson stan
Right,
accounts
they
instantly
are on.
liked it. I was like, okay. I mean, like
With the French accents and all. What's your
Yeah.
favorite line from it that doesn't need a subtitle?
I just love the scene. Well, actually, my favorite line is from the trailer when Willem Dafoe goes, "How long have we been on this rock? 5 weeks?
You do like that, like,
2 days? Help me to recollect." But also the scene where they're just like dancing and like they're drunk and they're like
it's too
Robert
much
Pattinson's
for me.
like, I'm like, what is going on? It wasn't like unintentionally or maybe intentionally, I don't know, like hilarious to me.
I'm glad you liked it.
I was laughing a lot. So
First thing
Yeah.
Fernando said when I told him, I was like, this one's not for me. Fernando said, yes, thank God.
yeah.
He goes, now I know I'm going to like it.
Exactly.
What about you, Zach? I know you got some of the Apple stuff. Anything else?
I did. I also caught Dolemite Is My Name, not in theaters. I watched it on streaming because it's available to stream on Netflix now, and I found it very, very enjoyable. Not to cut off what might be picked later in the show, but this is the return of Eddie Murphy to the Eddie Murphy we want to see on screen. Even though it's kind of giving him one foot in the more drama world as well. Getting to see him inhabit this character and really take on some of the dramatic aspects of the role, but cut loose and be funny and deliver some lines with zest that we haven't seen him really do. He's such a unique comedic talent that it's nice to get him back because he's so charismatic, and the movie is so filled with these really great actors, whether it's Michael Key showing up in one of the supporting roles, Wesley Snipes showing up in a supporting role, Mike Epps, the cameo from Chris Rock.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of great. Yeah. So it's a really fun movie, and it very much has a similar energy, I think, to The Disaster Artist. I know I'm not the first person to say this, but there's this energy like we're going to try and pull this together. We're all working on something, and we believe in it. It may be shoddy, and it may fall apart, but like it feels like heisty in a way that they're trying to get away with this. And it's also got a kind of interesting historical perspective too. So I really enjoyed this one. I'm a little bit disappointed that it feels like it's getting maybe not the respect it deserves because of its Netflix release. It's one of those Netflix movies that's just petering out.
Yeah. And I think it's just because Netflix has so many other ones coming out that it's just falling underneath, like Marriage Story or Irishman.
Yeah, and like you said, you saw it on the big screen. So the production design, the costume design at TIFF, what was the thing? Last year, Roma had the art installation. This year, they only picked one movie. That had it. It was all of the.
It's Ruth Carter who won last year for Black Panther.
Exactly. It was all of her stuff there on display for the costumes, and I agreed with you, dude. Ed Wood was what I was thinking the entire time, and then it turns out same people who did Ed Wood. That's what I heard.
Exactly.
I have not confirmed it, but is it? I was like, oh my goodness, that's exactly how I see it. So I agree with you with the heist film perspective.
Totally. My other one I've been watching is Watchmen, but we're going to get into that a little bit later in the show.
He's
Let us
seen
know
it
what you've been
twice.
watching. in the comments down below on YouTube or by shooting us an email. The address for that is intercutpod@gmail.com. But we are going to move on to the yay or nay, where we break down the latest happenings in the entertainment industry, starting with Apple TV Plus finally launched on November 1st. It made available its first bits of original programming, including, as we mentioned, a few episodes of The Morning Show, Dickinson with Haley Steinfeld, as well as C with Jason Momoa and Alfred Woodard. It also has the feature film Holla that I caught at Sundance, and the documentary The Elephant Queen, which many have suggested is a contender for Best Documentary at the Oscars. But Art, yay or nay, do you feel like this was a successful launch week for Apple TV Plus?
No. I've seen nobody talk about it. I don't think that it had the biggest splash that people wanted it to have. Like, have you seen people as... No, you know? It's weird to compare it because what was the last big thing to launch? The Criterion Channel?
Yeah.
You know? Like, we're only going to be able to compare it to what's about to come. What is it? Not next week, but the following with Disney Plus.
Right.
And we're going to feel that. So I don't know if that was supposed to be the comparison with Apple. I don't even know if that's what they were going for. It seems like a little soft rollout. Big stuff. I mean, C is a pretty big production. Like you said, the documentary, they're very much pushing 4 years to film that documentary, The Elephant Queen. But it still doesn't, it seems like you were saying, it's got that the negative thing that comes to streaming where it starts feeling like straight to DVD almost. And these are shows, but like you said, it starts like, okay, there's these three. Everyone sounds like they're waiting for the real Apple TV launch, like the real series, How many things did Netflix have right from the start that we don't go back to? It was just the stuff to get its footing down.
Right.
And House of Cards was the one. Yeah.
All the programming that they licensed from other people, which is something that Apple has chosen not to do.
I'm curious your perspective on that. Because a lot of people say if you don't have a friends or an office, you're not going to make it. And they don't.
Well, like, it's interesting because on one hand, like, I don't need Apple to have all this stuff that I can get elsewhere. Yeah. But on the other hand, now all Apple has are the shows that I've listed plus or minus one or two. And, these two movies that I mentioned. And that's not enough to get me to want to drop $4.99 necessarily, especially considering that The Morning Show only is releasing their first 3 episodes right now. And then they're going to go to a weekly calendar. I'm not convinced yet. Not to mention, I was tweeting about this in the past week. I don't really have a good way to watch Apple TV. At this point, it's only the app is only available if you have an Apple TV product, if you have Roku, or if you have a Samsung Smart TV from 2018 or 19. So it kind of limits its audience to people who have those products or people who are willing to watch it on their iPhone. And, like, I'm sorry, I just don't want to watch 10 hours of Reese Witherspoon and Jenna Aniston on a 5.5-inch screen.
That's not enough.
It just doesn't really sound entertaining.
Yeah, we're Apple people, right?
Right.
But you can't ignore everyone who has an Android. Like, what are you doing?
What's up?
But you know what I'm saying? It's like that's just not smart marketing. And I'll put it to you this way, right? I don't know if any of you guys have YouTube. The premium, I don't know if they changed the name to it. I remember it was Red, now it's Premium, it's whatever else. Yeah. That covers your music for YouTube Music. It covers your YouTube for the premium stuff that's there. It gets rid of the ads. It allows you background play, right? And and they offer family plans. Where is that in Apple, right? Why doesn't Apple have something like Prime does where who pays for Prime? Do you know how to pay for Prime? By buying Prime, the 2-day shipping. The video service is added
Apple
to
is
it.
offering a package to students where you can get Apple Music and Apple TV Plus. For those of us that aren't students anymore, shit out of luck, I guess.
That should be the package to begin with.
Yeah.
Your Apple multimedia everything. And they're going to change it. They just recently got rid of iTunes to come with the music. They're going to make another switch eventually is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and the thing is, we are entering this era where streaming is kind of starting to abandon the binge platform, right?
Yes.
Apple isn't releasing all the episodes at once. Disney isn't going to do that. Netflix is increasingly showing shows that release, in a rollout rather than all at once.
Or splitting half like BoJack.
Exactly. Yeah. So, when you look at that, I mean, Apple is definitely thinking more long term. They want to build. They want to continue to gain buzz. And the thing is, like, if episode 7 of Morning Show is must-see TV, then maybe Apple will get that buzzy social media moment that they didn't get in this first week of launch. But for now, there's like, I don't know, no one's really said that I need to go watch Jason Momoa in the show where everybody's blind. So,
is that what it's about?
I'll pass until they get something that I really need to see. I saw Hala at Sundance.
And Hala's not even out yet, so yeah, I agree with you. We'll see.
It's not.
It's not. It doesn't come out till later.
It's
It's not even available at launch. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see how Apple TV Plus continues to unroll. The future of Game of Thrones on HBO had a tumultuous past couple of weeks. First, after it was announced that the Naomi Watts-led prequel series helmed by James Goldman will not be picked up after HBO had issues with its pilot episode. The network quickly then ordered a different Game of Thrones prequel show straight to series. The show will be run by Ryan Condal and will bring in Battle of the Bastards director Miguel Sapochnik to direct the pilot and help run the series. George R.R. Martin will produce the show as well. So, Art, yay or nay, the future of Game of Thrones got brighter these past couple weeks?
I don't know. We'll see how it comes over there. But I will say a big yay to the director. He was very vocal. He was one of the ones that was very vocal, at times too vocal, along with the cinematographer when it came to the Battle of the Winterfell and stuff. But I do like his directing style, and I like how I like that they're keeping him on board. So it's nice to know that they're gonna have a very similar aesthetic, that it's all gonna be interconnected. My worry, because what did they say? They had like 6 shows, and we know how it works. You got 6 shows. Would they know half of them aren't gonna make it all the way to fruition? But it's interesting that the pilot for the one was not good enough, considering that the initial pilot for Game of Thrones, as we've heard, and even including with this past, 2 weeks ago with the big Q&A that they had, where they just pretty much said, we know a lot of what we were doing, that they would just cancel it, considering they gave them a second chance. They learned along the way. And I heard a very intriguing thing about it, that Rome was literally just rebranded to be Game of Thrones. And it explains so much about how the already attempted thing for Rome, the building blocks were there. They just reskinned it when it came closer. And that was a lot in the Q&A when they were like, yeah, we were writing stuff, but it's like, on your first outing, you weren't that good. You had to have had something. Well, yeah, they had a lot of the people who had done like Rome and stuff, and they had the material. But then towards the end, your colors. Bro, he said, we never wanted it to be a fantasy series. Those are for nerds. That's how it ends. Imagine ignoring how it's supposed to end. I'm excited for it. We'll see how it is when it comes out. It being a prequel. I mean, Better Call Saul is one of the very few series, I'd say, that's been able to withstand it. But get someone who cares and isn't going to leave because of a Netflix deal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go nay, reluctant, like kind of hesitantly and maybe mildly nay that the future is brighter for Game of Thrones. Because one thing is, this Game of Thrones prequel with Naomi Watts was already kind of, the wheels were turning while the final season was going. There's a world in which we would have gotten to see that show next year. Now they're starting from scratch with a series where they're going to have to write it. They're going to have to cast it. They're going to have to do all the production.
So soon,
Game of Thrones
dude.
is going to be gone from the collective consciousness for a little while. And who knows what the end product is going to be. I mean, I'm glad Miguel Sapochnik is on board because I've liked his work within the show. But I do feel like, maybe this is showing to HBO that Game of Thrones is not as vital to their future as they once thought it would be. They
got Succession.
It's been highly publicized that they
13
have
reruns.
like 4 or 5 different prequel series, like in some phase of development. And, sometimes you just can't replicate what you had. And I don't know.
True.
There's rumors that this is going to be about the Targaryens. And it just...
That's what I keep hearing.
To me, it feels like, maybe it's not as good to do something we're familiar with, but I don't know. I'm still curious about it, but I'm not exactly amped for it.
Yeah.
Agreed. I'm going to laugh when we get all of these series and then the books come out. Like, it's going to take that long for the books to get the official ending.
I think the one that they're making is based on like a book that's already out there that like details like the history of the Targaryens and stuff like that, but it's just like information.
it's a book called Fire and Blood,
Yeah.
but it's not part of the like official series, although it is by George R.R. Martin. Anyway,
Interesting. We'll see.
the first ever film submitted by Nigeria to compete in the Oscars International Film Feature category has been disqualified. The Nigerian film Lionheart, currently available to watch on Netflix, is partially in the Nigerian language Igbo, but is mostly in English, violating the Academy's rule that entries in the category must have, quote, a predominantly non-English dialogue track. This brings this year's number of international feature films entries down to 92 movies, which is still a record high for that category. Art, yay or nay? You agree with the Academy's rule on English language entries in this category?
No, nay, that's stupid. It's a production from Nigeria, and they switched the name. You idiots! Did you think we weren't? You switched it to from best foreign language film to best international film.
Right. This was something that you and I had speculated on. Like, is this going to open it up to Canadian movies or English movies? And I guess this rule was kind of their way of keeping those films out. But it feels like the rule is backfiring on them here.
It is, and I think they're going to change it eventually. Again, it's kind of like when Domino's dropped the pizza. You know, Dunkin' dropped the donuts. But they still had to make pizza and donuts commercials. And now they're trying to be like, oh, yeah, we have salads. No, you don't. I feel like this is going to come back to play years from now when they do change the rule. And they're going to be like, oh, but screw our movie, right? Because you still wanted to keep the rule for whatever reason. But right. I think the rule will... Why else change the name unless you're trying to open up that category? You've been trying to play with categories for more of these wins. It's starting to sound a lot like the Grammys, where people don't know the difference between Record of the Year and Song of the Year. Remember, we were supposed to get Popular Film and then Best Film. What? Well, one's for the roller coaster movies, and then the other one's for the Scorsese movies. I don't know what the difference. I don't want it to end up being like the Golden Globes. We've been asking for categories since the beginning of Intercut. You were like, "Where's the casting category?" I've been asking for a category to give to the stunt people, to the people who do more VFX, motion capture work. They're doing stuff to like appease. I don't know what they're doing, man. I don't know.
It's so weird because
I don't know, and I don't like this
they've
rule.
also been announcing like things. Like better changes, like they announced they're opening up the streaming library to have all the Best Picture nominees, so that more chances.
Yeah, so people.
And
can
now they're letting everyone vote for the Best International Film category, because before it was only the people in that category. But now this is kind of like a step back. So.
Another interesting thing, and I saw because you had retweeted it, Fernando, was the Golden Globe ones. If I'm not mistaken, it's the Golden Globe ones. In where what was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film?
It was Parasite and The Farewell. The Farewell, yeah.
The Farewell surprised me because, I mean, I've seen it twice, but I haven't sat there with a marker to tally up what language is the most in there. But to consider that one, and, you know, having made a video on it and seeing Lulu have to argue with the producers about them saying, yeah, but is this what kind of genre is this film? He's like, I don't know, what kind of genre is my life? And to now have to like specify this is an American film, even though it's from your Chinese American perspective. I don't know. It's weird.
Fernando,
it's interesting.
which festival? Which theater?
For the
which awards
for the
were
Golden
these?
Globes,
The Gothams?
Like The Farewell was submitted under foreign film. Yeah.
Oh, so it's submission. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry if I said nomination, but yeah, submission. That's interesting, right?
Yeah.
That's intriguing
a very
to me.
interesting choice.
Because one of the things, and I know you love The Farewell, still one of your favorites of the year, is that perspective that they took, and one where I want to continue seeing stuff like that. I mean, we've seen it with Narcos. No one bats an eye that Narcos is primarily in Spanish, and I don't know.
Well, I was thinking about a film like Burning, which has Korean and English. Is that a movie that, well, maybe it has a little bit too much English now, or something like that? Although it ultimately didn't get nominated for Best Foreign Film. Like
Catch Burning, I think it's streaming. But I agree with you. What about Parasite? They have that one, Chicago, Illinois. All of a sudden, it's an American film. I don't know. What else do you guys think about that? I don't agree with it, but
I mean, it's interesting because I feel like this rule is here for a reason, and part of that reason is maybe to not make it easier for a country like England, maybe, or a country that might get an unfair advantage because a lot of American audiences maybe would relate to it more or understand it better. You know, I feel like if this was competing against a bunch of English language movies, those English language movies have some kind of advantage. I don't think the solution is to outlaw this film or whatever. But
it's kind of confusing
because
then if you change it to any production outside the United States, then that England or like UK.
You're right. It could be anything. England, Canada, UK.
Because even then it gets really confusing because a lot of the big budget movies and stuff, like, they're already like co-productions.
They film other places.
Because like a bunch of different companies like finance from all over. Like Christopher Nolan's movies, all those are British productions. And people like it
starts getting confusing. And at that point, that's how you end up getting The Martian nominated for Best Foreign Language Film.
The president of the National Association of Theater Owners, John Fithian, has called the short theatrical run given to Martin Scorsese's latest film, The Irishman, a, quote, disgrace. He told the New York Times, it's a very big disappointment that the Netflix and the leading theater owners couldn't figure out a way to put a significant movie from Martin Scorsese on a lot of screens. The Irishman is going to play on 1/10 of the screens it should have played on. And had Netflix been willing to come to an understanding with our members, Art, yay or nay, The Irishman's limited theatrical run is a disgrace.
No. Can you imagine, like, you go up to a person, you're like, hey, you better be careful. Hey, you're making me. No, what are you talking about? You could have said yes to this. You didn't want to. You wanted them to play by your rules. It's interesting, coming off of the Sony Disney thing, which I still feel was all a ploy because Disney was never risking not having Spider-Man. This whole bit is so. This goes back to last year with Roma. Cutting Roma, that's so petty. We always say this. If you nominate 3 people for something and you tie for 2, that's so disrespectful for the third person. If it's out of 5 and you give it to one, or it's tied, sure. Here, it's like they had, last year was how many in the best
9?
picture?
I think it was 9.
9.
Yeah.
It was 9?
8, 9, something like that.
However it was, to show every single one minus Roma was stupid. And now in this case, they're... I was telling you earlier, Alfonso Cuarón, I love him, my tío. But this is Martin Scorsese.
Right.
The disgrace isn't on Netflix, homie. This is the one very few time I will ever quote Screen Rant. Couldn't even believe it. They wrote a good article. Screen Rant had a banger of an ending. Shout out to the author of this. He's like, the bigger disgrace isn't that it's not going to be playing in cinemas. It's that you are now showing that the place to go get valuable artistic stuff, isn't just subjected to the theater. It's going to be available at home, and that may be the bigger loss. When people start realizing, what have we just been saying earlier? We have this mindset that straight to DVD is bad. Straight to DVD starts smelling like Martin Scorsese movies.
Yeah.
Then he maybe has a point.
And
theaters are roller coasters.
Sorry, this is a wholly different scenario if the other studios are willing to fund The Irishman, but they weren't, and other studios weren't willing to fund Okja.
Yeah.
And Netflix has assumed the role of someone willing to finance risky films.
For how long?
And a lot of times those are the movies we want to see, are those riskier properties. It's a shame. I understand the theater owners' position here. If they allow some Netflix movies, they're going to allow all Netflix movies, and
why not?
They're basically cannibalizing their own business in some way by propping up Netflix. It's kind of a losing scenario, though. Netflix isn't going away, and as long as they're attracting attention, I feel like they should be trying to capitalize it on some way. I don't know.
Go ahead.
We don't know what the behind closed doors negotiations are, but I have to assume that the theater owners are being a little bit too harsh here, being unwilling to show any Netflix movies on any circumstance.
Like, really? Even for Martin Scorsese, make some sort of effort. When we talk about Roma not being there and stuff like that, it's still getting played. It's just getting played elsewhere. It's getting played at actual theaters. It's getting played at the Belasco, where Network, the Broadway play starring our boy Bryan Cranston. You got to check it out too, right? Mm-hmm. They're playing the movie in there. It is having a Broadway run. They said, "Oh, you want to play us in theaters? All right, can't be an artisan film like Joker. That's fine.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go."
They're reopening the Paris single screen theater to play Marriage Story, which I'm excited
That's
about. I'm
exciting,
going to go to
yeah.
the Paris Theater again.
I got excited for that one too. I was like, dang, I want to go because I can get to see. I think it was Mary Queen of Scots the last time I was over there. But yeah, it's like you're the one. Think about like someone got picked last at kickball. Yeah, well, it's on you guys. I'm not, that's what they're doing. The loss is on you, theaters. It's not on the movie. The movie's gonna live long. I've never understood this idea of like, if it's not in the cinema, it's not in the cinema forever.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, even with Disney, they're closing up some stuff. It's not in the cinema forever. Where does it go afterwards? Is it not a movie afterwards? This sounds like some stupid. And I say this because I had seen something recently. About like like when they say, and this was in Unbelievable, where they say a girl who's had sex is like a chewing gum or whatever. They're treating these movies as if unless they get played in the theaters, it's this goes back to cons, and this went stuff that we were doing at TIFF where they are just ignoring an entire site. And I think it's elitism.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
They're treating it like it's a whole like it's taboo, and it sounds as old as stupid traditions that we have. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, hard to really understand. But that's about it for yay or nay. We've got some more news topics to hit in our next segment, the interview, where we answer questions posted by you, the Intercut viewers. So be an Intercutie and send us your questions by leaving it in the comments on YouTube, hitting us up on social media at IntercutPod, or by emailing us intercutpod@gmail.com. We've got a few subjects suggested to us by Magnitude Reviews this week, starting with the slew of announcements from Warner Media, who revealed a bunch of new details about their upcoming HBO Max service. Notably that it will only cost $15 per month, the same price as the HBO cable channel, which raises the question of why anybody who can get both would subscribe to HBO and not HBO Max. But also they revealed the large slate of shows, including ones from TNT, TBS, CNN. HBO Max also pried the rights to South Park away from Hulu for $500 million and acquired what many people thought what was once unacquirable, the streaming rights to all the Studio Ghibli films. So what struck out to you about HBO Max's series of reveals, Art?
The South Park one, because the deal went, Trey Parker, what's the other guy?
Matt Stone.
We're like, this isn't just a deal for the streaming rights. We want to make sure we get 50 of the games, 50 of the merch, 50 of everything. I really like how they do business. That said, they brought back Mickey for one of the newer episodes. They were on Hulu. We know who owns Hulu. Hulu is Disney Plus's R-rated cousin, where they're going to be putting all the stuff that can't be there. I always wondered how is South Park going to get... now they're on HBO Max. So I found that really interesting, that now they found a new home. But I do like the way that they said Joker's going to be on there. That's going to be the place to hold Joker, and they are really pushing this.
The DC properties will be available.
We had mentioned this a while ago, that it's going to be every Warner Bros. Movie will be there, just like Disney is pushing every... Endgame will be on there by December. So they're pushing it where they really want you to have a subscription service for the studio logo that appears before every movie. There you go. It's all there. You have your technically Disney Pass, your Warner Bros. Pass. Peacock is the name of NBC Universal's one, right? I don't know. Can't wait for the bundle packages.
Yeah. It's going to be real interesting. Yeah.
It's intriguing, though.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I like the Studio Ghibli one just because of the two IndieWire articles that came two
literally day after the other.
The Studio Ghibli people were like, they'll never go on streaming. We're gonna keep having these like theatrical runs on the Fathom events. Next day, HBO Max gets the rights. I was like, oh, okay, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey, that's another thing too that he mentioned, the Fathom events. Why are theaters do Fathom events but they need 75 days? Why not do Irishman like that the same way, right?
Yeah. I don't know.
But what else stood out?
Well, the thing that stuck out to me about these announcements, they are doing this under the HBO brand, HBO Max. And even though not every show that they've planned to produce is necessarily going to make it to the cable channel HBO, it is kind of changing the idea of what the HBO brand is. I think in the past we've also talked about how whereas Netflix is really giving HBO a run for its money, whereas Netflix has quantity, HBO is quality. When HBO puts a show on, it's going to be a high production effort, that there's a lot of eyes and money and whatever that's gone into the product. Yes. And more and more it seems like they're going to have to go away from that. Traditionally HBO was a channel that for many years would only debut new shows on Sunday night, and just recently His Dark Materials, another one of their new big shows, debuted on Monday night.
Monday.
So, we're getting into this era where HBO is going to be a little bit less selective, and I wonder if that's going to change our relationship with HBO. I mean, not to look too far ahead into the future, but basically every show that's on my best of the year list towards the top of it is HBO. So,
wow, you like Game of Thrones season 8 that much?
I'm out here standing for the Winterfell battle.
I know, I feel you on that one. Yeah, that would suck. That they've always been known for being that. They were always that quantity over quality, and you knew that when you were going on HBO, the movies, they were the Warner Bros. Stuff. HBO Max is really just the more Warner Bros. Movies going to it. And I agree with you. I really hope that they don't start pushing stuff like that, and you start getting a lot more garbage in, because then I feel like your Successions, your 13 Reasons Why, your Chernobyls won't stand out as much. Because it's going to be flooded with a bunch of other poop. Let's hope not.
You just called it 13 Reasons Why.
Did I? It's the video I'm working on, man. I'm sorry. I keep referring to Euphoria to the title of the video, 13 Reasons Why I Love Euphoria. But you know what I mean? I agree with you. I agree with you 100% there. I really hope they don't go that route. Yeah. That would suck.
Yeah. The internet's least favorite writing duo, Benioff and Weiss, revealed to Deadline that they would no longer be working on a new Star Wars trilogy. The former Game of Thrones showrunners were announced as the helmers of an original trilogy set in a galaxy far, far away, back when Thrones was still airing new episodes. However, just like Josh Trank, Colin Trevorrow, Phil Lord, and Chris Miller, Benioff and Weiss will not be making a new Star Wars movie. The duo said that they wanted to focus on their new deal with Netflix, so... Are you glad to be spared of a Benioff and Weiss Star Wars trilogy?
Yes. Is the stuff from Netflix original from them?
I think so, yes.
And it has nothing to do with Confederates?
Yes, Confederate is dead.
That one's done? Okay, good. Yes. They can't mess up their original stories. Why would you want to give them yet another big franchise? And even if they killed it, you can't escape what happened with Game of Thrones and the skepticism that'll be there. Why do that, right? Look at Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi. People love it, people hate it. People refuse to even hear any other, whatever stand that they put. The same thing, they were going to carry that baggage to it, so it's the smartest thing they could have done. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I do love this growing list of the directors that never made it. It's sort of like those Kanye albums that were never released, like Good Ass Job and the High Graphics, all Yandi. It's like all of these directors of what could have been.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Fernando, I think you're the biggest Star Wars fan out of all of us. How do you feel about this?
I'm like conflicted because I totally understand Art's point that 100% that baggage was gonna follow them, and it's gonna follow them like pretty much forever. And there was always gonna be that conflictedness of like, is this gonna be good? Because they ended on a pretty low note. Obviously, we talked about that Q&A they did where they're basically like, yeah, we didn't know what the hell we were doing with Game of Thrones, and lots of people have been like crapping on them, and I don't want to like defend them because I feel like for me, like being like a minority or whatever, like it doesn't seem right to like defend them in some way because they're like privileged white men. I mean, like both of their parents are like successful as hell. I think like. Yeah,
they don't need a lot of defense.
So the fact that they said that Game of Thrones was like their film school, right? I mean, like, sure they ended on a low note, but I mean, like, they were also responsible for giving us the best seasons of Game of Thrones. I was actually interested in what they were gonna do with Star Wars. Was I gonna be nervous? A little bit, yeah. It wasn't gonna be wholly original, but they were gonna work in a time period that was far away from what we know currently. So they did have more room to play. Right. And I find it interesting that I read, I don't really know if they left, because the initial report was like they left on their own accord because they wanted to focus on Netflix. But then some people were saying, oh, this was in talks for months and they knew they were going to leave, whatever. But the fact that
it did have a feeling. It did have a little bit of a feeling of let's get ahead of the story.
So
and say we
I
quit.
think I read something that said that Kathleen Kennedy wasn't as confident in them because once they signed that Netflix deal, they were gonna like multitask everything, and she was like, no, like we want you just focusing on this. Like we don't trust you guys like juggling a bunch of projects. So in that vein, I feel like that might be a positive. I know some people are also trying to spin this on like, oh, Kathleen Kennedy sucks at producing, right? Like, you know, those Star Wars fans.
Right.
Yeah. Is that where the other news came from, where they started saying that Star Wars is very strict and there's no wiggle room for improvisation?
Yeah.
You read that article as well?
With the Lord and Miller stuff. So I don't know. I think it was a good move if they did want them to focus on it solely to get them out, and if they were fine leaving. I mean, at that same time, like, they're privileged enough to where they can walk away from Star Wars, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna do this stuff with Netflix that just made us like, I forgot how much their deal was with them, but that's crazy.
I think it was like $200 million or something crazy.
Bro, your film school was the biggest show.
So they're straight chilling. Like they're not crying that they lost Star Wars. They're like, we're fans. Like, I mean, like, but I mean, we'll just go do something else.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And they just co-wrote Gemini Man. Like, I mean, y'all can really do anything at this point.
I mean, you know, maybe you want to rag on him for Gemini Man, but Benioff is also the man who wrote 25th Hour.
This is what I want. This is what I want to talk with you, Zach. I saw you share this. Zach, David Ayer is also the guy who wrote Training Day.
Yo, man, I'm saying sometimes you're capable. Sometimes you gotta just know your zone. You gotta know your zone.
I have faith for everyone, but sometimes we'll see. And I agree with you. I am very excited to see their Netflix original stuff. Hey, you know I'm a big I was gonna say Carlton Cuse and Damon Lindelof, but I'm a big Lost fan, and I'm always there for them. Do they disappoint me all the time? Yes. I cannot wait for an entire series, an entire new generation to be disappointed by the creators of their favorite show. But I also hope that within there they release some really good stuff, and I hope by that point Netflix and theaters have a good connection.
Well, thank you for the very easy transition, because what Samada asked if we've been watching the new Damon Lindelof show, HBO's Watchmen. I happen to be all caught up on it. Art, I know you haven't seen it yet, and Fernando, you've seen a little bit of it?
No, I was going to last night, but I was too tired. I was like, I gotta devote time to this.
What's Watchmen?
Who's watching Watchmen? I am.
You love it.
I love it so far. Magnitude Reviews also asked us to comment on the Watchmen backlash, and I don't know if you guys have been hearing much about that.
I have heard of that, yes.
And I've found that pretty interesting, although I'm trying to stay clear of most of it, just because I don't, you know, it seems like it's coming largely from a group who's very devoted to the original, and I just don't have that same, like, preciousness for old IP.
That's right.
I find what Damon Lindelof is doing to be really, really exciting. He's, you know, completely reimagining the world. He called this a remix, and it really does feel like this, in that it's not disregarding or disrespecting the original. In fact, it's operating under the assumption that the original happened, and it's expanding on that. You know, this is a show that takes place in modern day, whereas the comics took place in the 80s, and it's basically saying, well, had this been a real situation in the 80s, how would history play out? It's more like an alternate history even than it is necessarily like a comic adaptation. And that's kind of what I love about it, because he's really trying to put this into the context of a larger society. That's something that the original Watchmen, in my mind, as not necessarily a big fan of it, but somebody who's familiar with it, it does really well in sort of imagining a world that's been affected and altered by the presence of these superheroes. You know, in the original Watchmen, they win the Vietnam War, and then in the Watchmen series, they talk about Vietnam as the 51st state. And I really love seeing the elements of that, like that. So I know some people have been upset about the way in which it puts the racial dynamics front and center. And I would say that that's just, you know, Damon Lindelof is very cognizant of the way that the world works. I think if you've seen any of his responses to Lost controversies, he's very aware of what the dialogue online sounds like, and he's putting the Watchmen property firmly in 2019 when these dialogues are in the conversation. Yes, it's adapted to this fantasy world, but I think he's found a really elegant way to combine real world issues with this fantastical world. I'm super, super into it. I will say, for those of you who have seen the show, I think a lot of people who really like the original novel wouldn't be so put off had the third episode come first, because the third episode involves a lot of direct calls to the original book, whereas the first two are more so inspired by.
Interesting. The only thing I know of the show was when Alan Moore, if I'm not mistaken, right, came out and said no. Just no. And Damon Lindelof wrote a huge thing on Instagram. I remember reading this. I was in Boston at the time. And I read every single thing. This man did a whole, he wrote it, took a picture of the PDF, uploaded it. I'm like, homie, I've never seen this done before. And I had to scroll through pictures, reading his response on his Instagram. And he pretty much just said, as much as I love your work and it's influential and it hurts to hear you say, it's not going to stop. And I have so much faith in this and that. Damon Lindelof also being very famous for making fun of George R.R. Martin. What was it? 5 years in the waiting? 8 years, something like that. Yeah. If you don't remember, Lost ended. Game of Thrones isn't made into a series yet, and they asked George, "Will you ever make it into a series?" He goes, "Yes, but can you imagine it be a series and then it has an ending like Lost?" That broke Damon's heart. He was just reading Game of Thrones, all of these different things. He waited. What was it? The 8 years. Season 8 happens. Oh, I recommend going to read that stuff up. I'm a fan of his. I love the recommendation you're giving to it. I'm excited to see it. How many episodes is it supposed to be?
I want to say 10, but maybe it's only 8.
Okay. I'm excited for it. I mean, I read the graphic novel. I have the director's cut, or ultimate cut, whatever it is from Snyder's. And I even caught up on the before Watchmen stuff. I don't know if you guys remember. That was a mini series that came out in comic form where it would follow the comedian. It would follow different characters that happened just right after the events of the first one. So I'm aware of the universe. I know this is supposed to be brand new, so...
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I'm probably gonna check it out too. And all the controversies are what's getting me excited to watch it, because the fact that I love it when things that are adapting from novels and stuff aren't direct adaptations, but rather inspired by or taken things in the world and they do their own thing with it, and I find that really cool. And I mean, just the cast alone, I'm hearing Regina King is phenomenal in it. And I'm excited to see her and Jeremy Irons. Does he play a bad guy in this?
It's kind of to be determined, I think, with Jeremy Irons, at least from the episodes that I've seen. But Regina King and Gene Smart shows up in episode 3.
Good.
Episode 3 is the best of them so far, I think. I'm really, really excited to see where this goes. Another thing that I'll mention, a lot. I think one of the major reasons that it kind of got controversial is that the show opens up on the 1921 Tulsa Massacre. And, for a show that's ostensibly about the Watchmen, to basically spend the first 5 to 10 minutes on something that has nothing to do with Watchmen catches people off guard, especially if you're a person who's very, very excited to see this show. But this is Damon Lindelof being smart. Again, this is Damon Lindelof, the dude who made us fall in love with Lost. He knows that this is when the series is going to have the most eyes on it, and he's putting something that he really wants you to pay attention to right at the top.
You don't think it ever
That's
comes
all
out?
I'll say.
You don't think it comes out too preachy at all?
No, not at all.
Because you said it takes place 2019, right?
Yes.
All right. We'll see. I can't.
I think the politics are really muddled in a realistic way.
All right. You'd pick it over the boys.
Yes. Make sure to leave us a question in the YouTube comments by emailing us at intercutpod@gmail.com to get featured on the next show. You can also reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Our handle is at IntercutPod on all 3. Intercut POD. That's short for podcast. Be an intercutie and send us your movie, TV, and entertainment questions. But it's time for our topic of the week, and this
Let's
week's
go.
topic, Disney's recent purchase of 21st Century Fox has had a lot of ramifications, but among them is the uncertain fate of the Fox-produced films they acquired. Disney Plus unveiled its day one slate on Twitter and notably omitted some Fox titles like David Lynch's Wild at Heart, the Bryan Singer X-Men series, and Alien. Furthermore, Disney has apparently been denying repertory movie theaters requests to screen its classic films like Planet of the Apes and The Omen. So, Art, what do you think of Disney's handling of these Fox films?
Not a fan. I think it's this. No, it's. I was reading up on a lot of the stuff when it comes to like, we go to the Music Box all the time. That's like a big institution over here. You know, you have IFC Center. I don't know what it is for you guys over there in Florida, but I'm sure you have those like movie houses where that's the one place that's playing those movies, and a lot of those movie houses rely on those specific films. The bigger, supposedly the split was that it's kind of like a YouTube representative when they have to decide whether your monetization for your video is, and they like have to decide. You have to better hope they're having a good day. They have to decide whether you are a first run, big budget theater, I guess, or a more who gets to decide that? I don't know. And there are some places that are legit, like we literally fit every criteria and they still told us no. And the biggest problem with that is that they don't make their money off of the independent films that are out there most of the time, sometimes. But they get a lot of their stuff from these cult classic films that they get to show and they make a lot of money from. Sometimes 60% of their revenue. And if that's the case, and you're not letting them have those movies, that strips them of those funds, and places like certain cinemas in Atlanta that I heard of will not be able to survive without that. I've always hated their vault thing, back when they did that with their Disney films, because I was never able to buy Alina, the Beauty of the Beast, because I was in the vault for whatever reason. So no, I'm not a fan of this, and it sounds to me like it's dealing something with rights and just holding off those properties so another installment can't be made, or whatever it is. We don't know how those rights stuff works. There's all this behind the scenes stuff, but again, it's clearly a money thing because there's no other reason to hide a piece of art that's already been released.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the idea to maybe make it more limited and then drive up demand, or if it's just a way of disassociating themselves with certain properties that they don't think suits Disney. But regardless of it, it's really a shame, especially when you consider that these repertory houses and theaters that put on these like anniversary screenings and stuff like that, it's the way that many people get exposed to some of these older movies and these older films. You get to stay in the conversation. As somebody who tries to go and see an older film when it is shown in a repertory theater, if it's a movie that I've wanted to see and haven't been able to see on the big screen, you hope you will get the chance to. I know I've been really thankful for the chances to see some of my favorites on the big screen when I have been. This isn't sculptures or paintings or things that we go see in museums, right? This is movies. They need to be shown in movie theaters in order to be able to appreciate them. And it's one thing if you don't want to necessarily put it on the streaming service. I get it that there might be some rights issues or financial things that don't necessarily incentivize that. But when you make it
just get rid
so
of
that
it?
nobody can really screen the movie, even that it's basically like we're hiding this film from existence. That's
weird.
And then
because the person making that decision had nothing to do with the original making of the movie.
I feel like that just like brings on itself like a bunch of more problems, like that might like increase like piracy or something. Like if people can't find it anywhere else, like what's their only option, And like
you're telling them they can't legally buy the film.
I really don't know what they're doing in that aspect, and it's like some people every year they go see Die Hard during like Christmas, like every year they play that.
Right.
So I guess like they're not gonna do that anymore. I don't know.
My thing with it, or unless you had.
I was just gonna say that like those like Fathom events and things like that are like huge. Like everyone goes to see like the Studio Ghibli that runs like twice a month. Those get packed. Yeah.
Packed like crazy, and I love the ones like they just had Apocalypse Now at the IMAX and Dolby. Like those are equipped for big theaters. I know you were saying that movies aren't museums, but they should have that stuff. Apollo 11 was getting played over here at the Museum of Science and Industry in the like 360 theater. There are some projections that you can only get in the theater, and to be able to strip it, like we even said, from the big theaters The indie theaters aren't going to have that projection. You know, they're not going to be able to host. I mean, yeah, they'll be able to play it in 70 millimeter, but it's not going to be like it is, you know, on an IMAX screen. And you're saying those can't get it. Why? Because of money? It's sounding very greedy to me, and the people who are hurting from it the most are the fans of these things. Buy your media so they can't take it away from you. That's what I would say.
Especially when you consider that Disney is such a large company, and this would, you know, seemingly represent such a small percentage of whatever profits they would make, that it does, it seems extra greedy. And it's unfortunate because you'd like to think that giving access to these films might necessarily boost their profiles or keep them in the conversation or whatever it is.
Sounds like that's like not something they want.
Yeah, I don't know. It would be really interesting to see if they had any public comment on why some of these films are being kept out of the public eye. I mean, obviously we know in certain cases when it comes to their own movies, such as Song of the South, that they have their own reasons for not wanting to publish them, but there's nothing offensive about some of these films. I just makes me wonder, like, what is the thought process? What is the calculations? And ultimately, because we know so little about that thought process, you know, what's the future for these movies? Are we going to lose them in like, you know, companies acquiring companies? You know, let's say Disney is acquired by some companies that's just not interested in showing films theatrically. Does that mean we're just going to lose access to all of these things?
They get bought by Amazon.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's a slippery slope. It kind of reminds me. This has to do with beer, but there is and I'm blanking on the beer company in specific, so I guess I'll keep it vague to it, but it is a pretty big company, and over on the West Coast, they actually had a banquet, kind of like just a place where, like, almost like a VFW center, you know, where people were able to rent that out to be able to host events, but this was a free charity room, and anyone was able to stay there if they wanted, and people had booked it for months. Then the company comes out and goes, sorry, we have to close this. I don't know if it's like Lagunitas or something like a pretty big company that I got, again, purchased by a bigger company. But before that, they made a non-for-profit building, and people had suggested they had built all these crazy things there, and they were giving beer and all these different things to them. Then they said, oh, you know, with a broken heart, we have to close the place down, no more reservations. But people had already booked. These charities who have little money, and they found a place, and they're like, great, all the money that we're going to save for that, we're going to invest it in all of the invitations we sent out, but the place isn't open yet. The amount of things that Disney has an influence on isn't just for itself, you know? They have a responsibility, and they're going to be hurting. We're hearing about theaters right now, but I don't know what's next, you know? They have a lot of influence outside of the people who directly work for Disney, is what I'm trying to say.
Hey, but at least Marvel has control of the X-Men again, you know? So I think that's just about it for topic of the week. We're going to go to our last subject of this and every week. It's the New to See, where we give you our picks for the week, the movies and TV shows on streaming and in theaters that we recommend for y'all to watch over the weekend. Art, start us off. What is your pick for the week?
If you go into the theaters, you already know what to watch. Parasite. I believe it is expanding, but I will bring up another one in case it is in your area. I caught Marriage Story. Wow. Wow, does that grow on you? I've never been so excited for a movie being on Netflix, because I want to go back and just that's why the kids doing, because they had brought it up. The cause and effect. Oh my! It's almost like a web that you can make for this movie. I've never sat through a drama where I was like, the drama feels so palpable. I can actually make a Venn diagram of the cause and effect and relationships between the parents and the kids, and beautiful.
There's a really amazing way in which actions that start out innocent evolve into really like costly and tragic things. And it's nobody's fault but the circumstance.
It's nobody's fault.
That movie's gonna destroy me.
The scene. Yes, scenes where they just acted like this, having to look at each other, while someone else had to speak for them. Oh man! If you're going to the theaters and you want your heart broken, go watch that movie with your friends.
How about our girl Laura Dern kicking off her shoes, going for that Oscar?
Oh, I think it's in the bag. For supporting, I don't know who else is in the supporting. When she said the Mary Magdalene line, not Mary Magdalene, the Virgin Mary line, I was like, oh my goodness. Better than Renata, for sure.
Yeah.
I got 3 things for streaming, though. BoJack Horseman. Season 6, they're splitting it. Zach, you're recommended probably. I'll talk more about it with you. But the 2 other ones, one's on YouTube. The other one is on Shudder, I believe. One Cut of the Dead. Highly recommend it. Wow.
Very good.
Go in knowing nothing. Go in watching the trailer. The trailer only shows you a fraction of the movie. It makes you think it's, another movie that it's not even supposed to be. The first 30 minutes is like, okay, that's interesting. This is that's interesting. Makes no sense what I'm saying right now because I want you to go and blank. It is do you know what country it's from? I know it's an Asian film. Fantastic. It's like they're making a zombie movie. It reminds me a lot of Living in Oblivion, which is one of my favorite movies when it comes to movie making. And this is like movie making clashed in with a zombie film, clashed in with just indie love. You know, if you've ever made a movie with your friends or like on the worst budget or someone's got to take a poop in the middle of you filming something, that's this movie right here. I recommend it. Make sure you sit through all of it, though. The other one is Sunday Service. Mr. Kanye West released something on IMAX theaters, and I cannot recommend that, but it was something. 30 minutes, $15 prices. I should have stayed at home and watched his Sunday service, these free services that he's doing everywhere. Sunday service being the name of the choir that he's going to places with on a Sunday. He's been to Jamaica. He did a couple of stuff in New York. Howard University. He did the stuff in LA. He kills it. Even if you're not a big fan of the songs, the renditions he does live with the Sunday service. If you've never been to a gospel, just worship session, it's on. You don't need. I say this all the time. A lot of people don't like the new album because the lyrics. That's fine, but that still sounds like yay. That's still some of the best production. And let me tell you something. When you weren't paying child support when you were listening to Gold Digger, so I don't think you need to be a Christian to listen and bump the new music that he has. But with the Sunday service, some of this stuff is just impeccable. I highly recommend listening to some of the snippets. It's not perfect. They say, Alina always tells me your choir is only as good as your best singer or as your worst singer. Kanye ain't the best singer, but the Sunday service group, I would even say check out the James Corden thing. Wow. Just honestly, it's beautiful music. And those would be my picks of the week. Some music, some horror, and some depressing animation from Netflix that's ending soon.
All right, a bunch of recommendations from Art. Fernando, what are your picks for the week?
Theaters, I guess I could recommend. I think Pain and Glory is in a couple theaters right now. I know that came out at TIFF. It played at Con, I think. But I caught it. I loved it. I think it's actually my first Almodovar. I don't know if you guys have seen any of his. Yeah, it was my first one. And I think Antonio Banderas like kills it. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Potentially on his way to an Oscar nomination.
Definitely probably gonna get best international.
Killer final shot.
Cinematography is great. Definitely recommend that one. And then on streaming, one that we mentioned earlier, Dolemite Is My Name. Really enjoyed it. I think it's quietly gonna be one of my favorite movies of the year. Eddie Murphy's great. Wesley Snipes is fantastic. And then The King is, if you like Timothy. Mr. Timmy. There's a lot of memes going out around. Yeah,
it's a fucking charade.
Robert Pattinson.
It's great.
There's another goofy performance next to his Lighthouse one. It's good. Even if you don't like
great.
Medieval tellings of like the kings and whatever, it might be for you. So check it out. Yeah,
it might be. Yeah,
dope.
Good picks. Dope. What about you, Zach? What you got?
A lot of good picks. I second Parasite. I second everything that Fernando just recommended, except for one of them because I didn't see it. Which one did I don't forget.
One of them.
I second a lot of the stuff that you guys were saying. I'll piggyback on BoJack Horseman season 6 part 1. I guess is up on Netflix now.
Yeah.
And I believe that they were informed that this would be their final episodes when they were writing,
Yeah.
and it really does feel like they have an end game in mind here,
Which is good. I'm happy.
which is great. A show as smart and beautiful as BoJack Horseman has been, it deserves to go out on a intentional note, and the way that they've set up the final bit is really, really intriguing. But those 8 episodes they just published are really, really great too. I think the show, it's kind of hard to imagine the show without BoJack being problematic at its center, but I think they've done a really great job of reckoning with his desire to be a better person, plus all the negative things that he's done and the people he's affected. Particularly that 8th episode of the 6th season is really, really well done, and features a bunch of characters who you might not think would be the star of the episode, but end up being important. I don't know. It's a show that is so empathetic and so thoughtful and so insightful about life that I will be very sad when it is finally over. But I'm glad we still have this for now. Go watch BoJack. It's funny and sad. I'll throw a recommendation out there for Crown Vic, which is going into limited release in theaters. Speaking of our boy David Ayer, this one kind of reminded me of End of Watch, in that it's kind of like a gritty, wrong side of the law, but not really cop drama, in which these pair of cops, one more of a veteran, one more of a rookie, are out on a night when a stolen police cruiser has been going down the streets of I forget which city they're in actually, but it's a really cool film. Tom Jane plays one of the cops, and I just think if you're into those cop movies, if you're into like a down and dirty action thriller, this is worth your time. Also, I realized we haven't talked El Camino.
Ooh. What'd you think?
This is of course the Breaking Bad sequel film just released on Netflix. I think ultimately this is because Breaking Bad was such a big deal, and because we got this announcement 5 years after Breaking Bad, that your expectations end up being they must be doing something crazy here. And ultimately, I think we got 2 solid Breaking Bad episodes. I don't think they were.
I've not put it. Yeah, that's a good way.
I don't think they were some of the best that Breaking Bad has ever done, that this creative team has ever done. I don't feel like it feels like a fitting ending for the Breaking Bad series, so it doesn't necessarily feel like they should have made this 5 years ago. But it's still really well-crafted stories, really clever situations, that the ways that the Breaking Bad crew has likes to write their characters into corners and then have them crawl their way out of them is still some of the most compelling drama out there.
Is.
So I kind of loved it, even though it was very minor Breaking Bad. It's still 100% worth your time, and more than just an excuse to go revisit a bunch of the characters that we saw before.
I agree with you the same way. I felt it was if Breaking Bad was the conclusion for Walt, and Saul is that's his. This was Jesse's, and I thought it was a good one.
Yeah, so I recommend that as well. There's
some good stuff.
And definitely Watchmen. I hope you guys catch up on Watchmen soon, because I've been really eager to talk with people about it.
I haven't caught a show on a week by week basis other than Euphoria recently. But that's because I started that one earlier. I thought all the episodes had caught up, and then I thought it had ended on me, and I had one more left. I might start catching up this one on a week by week basis. We could talk about it.
Please do. But yeah, that's all for this week's show. You can catch more from me, Zach Shevich, by following me on Twitter, Instagram, or Letterboxd @ZShevich, or check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/multiplexshow. Art, where can people catch more from you?
You can find me at the A to Z Show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, as well as the Let Me Explain stuff that we have going on as well, and weekly here on the Intercut podcast. Also joined by Fernando.
Fernando, where can you catch more from
Twitter
you?
At border_logic, my bad.
Border Logic.
And then all my writing that is on www.theatzshow.com, which we're gonna have a lot of more stuff pumping out over the next couple of weeks. Best of the decade stuff,
Absolutely.
little something like that.
Yeah.
So
are y'all ready? Are y'all binging
I got
stuff?
to.
Yo, my list is long.
Yeah. Mine's gonna get longer,
Man.
So
A lot to
I'm
revisit.
Oh.
Thank you,
problem.
Fernando. You can catch more from us by listening to every episode of the Intercut podcast on iTunes, on SoundCloud, or your favorite podcatcher. I happen to like Overcast. And then make sure you subscribe not just to the audio podcast, but to the video feed as well on youtube.com/intercutpod, where you can catch our bright, smiling faces as we break down the latest in entertainment. Find new episodes of Intercut every Friday. Please leave us a comment, like the videos, considering heading over to iTunes to leave us a 5-star review. You know, I didn't realize this, but I went into the iTunes store to get these reviews, to like see how the people are feeling about us, and they only show you the ones from the country you're in. So we're missing out on a couple positive reviews coming from Brazil and the UK and New Zealand. So shouts to Kimberly and Bia Morelia. I don't even know how to pronounce some of these names.
We can't even see them?
Yeah, you have to go to Chartable. That's how I found them. But if you go to the US iTunes store, their reviews are not visible to us. So sorry we haven't given you your due yet. We love our international fan base. We're really big in Paraguay.
Hey, shout out, you were showing me earlier. Shout out Paraguay, shout out Paraguay.
Yeah.
Shout out India. Bro, I didn't even know y'all were watching over there. Shout out you guys. We can't hear you. I don't know why they won't let us see the reviews, but hey, at least you guys are hearing us, so we appreciate that.
Absolutely. Like our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages, all of them are at IntercutPod to get updates throughout the week from Art, from me, from Fernando, from all of our guests here on the Intercut podcast. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, we're kind of a big deal on Spotify in Paraguay.
That's goofy.